Thursday morning. We're broadcasting live from Atlanta, about a mile from the Battery. Braves will be starting spring practice here pretty soon. So will the Rays. So will the Cardinals. Those are the big three teams in our footprint. But Brendan
It was
Martin,
hard to wake. It was hard to wake up this morning. I don't know what it is around Florida. It's all foggy, and it's like nobody wanted to get out of bed. I put extra Irish coffee.
Yeah, there you go. I mean,
it's funny because you order it at Starbucks and they don't serve it that way.
Well, you got to go to Costco and get the Bailey's Irish Cream or Riley's. Riley's. It's got a green shamrock on there. That stuff had to wake you up in the morning. But hey, Johnny Ballpark Franks is going to check in with us this morning up in Nashville. A man for all seasons, born and raised in Huntsville, Alabama. FSU grad, covers the SEC, the big picture of college athletics, and has done more Heisman Trophy interviews than anybody in America. Over 14,000 interviews of sports celebrities and guests throughout the years. Coach Matt Dean checks in with us. I'll tell you what, we're going to be talking a lot of SEC basketball today. And John Hartwell, AD at ULM. He's been around, been at Troy, been at Ole Miss for 10 years. Utah State, 7.5 years, now at ULM. We're going to get in and ask these guys, hey, what is the purpose? Is anything going to come out of the meeting with Greg Sankey, SEC commissioner, and the commissioner of the Big Ten? And I'm curious what John said. John's got experience in the private sector. He's a CPA, Citadel grad from Mobile, has been in the private sector. I want to get his thoughts on that as well. Everybody listening, thank you. And remember,
make sure you subscribe.
Yeah,
to the show. Hit free.
Where's that button on the screen there?
Bottom right. If you're watching on your desktop and you're on YouTube, you just go to the bottom right. You'll see a little YouTube icon. You hover over it, it will pop up and it'll say subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. You'll get our content for notifications for free. And if you're watching on Facebook, make sure you just like the page. Go ahead and like the page, follow us, and you'll also get notifications because we're broadcasting in both places. You can catch us in both ways. You'll get notifications either way. That's how you do it.
Absolutely. And tell your friends and neighbors. Hey, we got a lot to talk about. We have great sponsors. We'll tell you about them throughout the show. Let's go.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Johnny Ballpark Franks. I see him there. He is the ump. He does a great show Mondays, 5 p.m. in his hometown of Huntsville, lives in Nashville. Johnny, Brendan Martin, executive producers down in Ocala, Florida, in the studio of Buddy Martin, his dad. And we've been talking a lot of college basketball, and it's never college football is out of season, but want to get your thoughts on the SEC basketball race. You saw last night what happened. Auburn and Tennessee both got drummed on the road last weekend. Auburn comes back home, defends the Neville turf, gets a good win over South Carolina. Tennessee goes on the road, wins at Arkansas. But how many teams right now, could we have a two-way, three-way tie? This is a tight race. Yeah. Johnny, can you hear us?
Well, I think it's no. Here, I'll try to talk to him here.
Okay. Well, look, the race right now, Alabama is alone at number one in the league, on top of the league. South Carolina and Auburn now are a half game back. So what I saw last night around the conference, the night before, we know Florida had a 2-point win at home against LSU. What I see from the bottom up, South Carolina was picked 14th in the preseason. Look at the push they're getting. Look at the push that we're getting from LSU. Vanderbilt got a win over Texas A&M, 1-point win in Nashville after A&M had won 85-69 over Tennessee in College Station Saturday. There's nowhere to hide in this league. And Todd Golden's team, they're leading the nation in rebounding. You start looking at these stats, I promise you, they mean a lot. And they, as the season goes along, that's what happens. The question about Tennessee, Zakai Ziegler, is he the straw that mixes the drink? Hell yeah, he is. He's a point guard. Try having a football team without a quarterback. It's not going to happen. You're not going to be very good. You might win 6 or 7 games, but in the SEC, with what coaches are paid, that'll get you fired. You got to do it. But I think what we got right now in SEC basketball, I am seeing right now every school has made a commitment. I wonder about Vanderbilt. I don't understand them. Great tradition. They never had a losing season at Memorial Gymnasium until Bryce Drew about 5 years ago. That was a shocker. Never. And now it's common. I mean, they're doing it every year. Missouri, they won a bunch of games last year. They've got 3 of the top 100 basketball players coming in for next year. So, you look at Ole Miss, Chris Beard. Now, reality is setting in for Ole Miss. They don't have a ton of talent. They play hard, but it is starting to catch them. But, I've been hearing this all season long about Florida. Again, look at stocks. Follow their 200-day moving averages, okay? You start looking at them, how they're going to break out. That's what Florida's doing. Florida's a breakout right now, okay? They would be called a buy. They would be called a buy in the stock market. They're playing really good. Georgia, they're playing hard. They're losing a lot of close games. And then they lost to Arkansas. Arkansas, on the other hand, was a team picked top 3, top 4, and they're having a terrible season. I just think that, you look, and here's a question from David Arnoff. How is Missouri viewed nationally versus within our conference? I think people in the SEC, I'll start with that, don't know what they are. I mean, they're in the Big 8 footprint and in the Big 12, but St. Louis is across the river from Illinois. That's Big 10 country. Okay. I just, that part of it to me tells you that Missouri, maybe they belong in the Big 10 in some people's eyes, but the season they had last year, 11-2 with the win in the Cotton Bowl over Ohio State, basketball wise, they've got really good basketball tradition. But I don't think that they're viewed nationally. I think a lot of people think Missouri belongs in the Big 10 or should have stayed in the Big 12. So SEC people, most people in the SEC, they just hadn't been out to Columbia, hadn't been out to Missouri. But I'll say this, they've got super passionate fans. Johnny, that was just an interesting question. How is Missouri viewed nationally versus within our conference? But you see it. How do you see? Where do you see Missouri standing? I mean, they're in the SEC. They went 11-2 last year. They're struggling in basketball, but they've been good in basketball most years.
Yeah, what is Missouri? I mean, back when I was first following college sports, Missouri was a football power in the 70s.
Yeah,
Remember, they handed Alabama its only loss in 1975 to begin the year that season. Then Missouri became a basketball school, a men's basketball school. Now that program is non-existent. Now football is, it should be a top 10 program, but then again, you're playing inside the SEC where, as we ended up the 2023 season, 8 of the teams that are competing on the football field this fall finished in the top 17 in the country, which includes Texas and Oklahoma. So I guess the big question is, what is Missouri? I still have a tough time 12 years later, adopting Missouri into the SEC. It just doesn't feel right. But then again, it never felt right that Colorado was out in the Pac-12. It doesn't make sense that we have a Big Ten with how many programs? We have a Big 12. There's nothing big about the Big 12, and there's not
No.
12 teams there.
No.
So I'm just really confused as a college sports fan. Because here's the thing, remember when we were, teaching kids about geography and everything, you could use sports analogies to help them. Now it would be like total confusion. It'd be like that new math we talked about in the 70s.
I have a young kid and I got new math and I don't know how to divide with the new math. I don't get it.
Well, I was always strange as a math student. I was always considered the best math student, no matter if I was in the 3rd grade, 8th grade, whatever the case may be. I did math my own way, and the teachers were always confused how I came up with answers. And honestly, I couldn't really tell them. I could show them, but it had nothing to do with their formulas. I didn't realize that I just thought differently, and I was like 2-3 steps ahead of the game. Now I'm really like totally confused. Don't get me started where we are with college athletics. There's nothing. Yeah. It's just like watching the Olympics and seeing NHL players out there representing their countries. None of that makes sense. None of this makes sense to me.
No, it doesn't. And Johnny, we all know that Greg Sankey.
I've lost you again. I cannot hear you right now.
You there? You hear us,
okay.
Johnny? Yeah. No, yeah. Maybe we got. You there?
Well, I don't know what's going on. I can't hear you. So maybe we could try doing the phone call. I don't know what's going on.
Okay. We'll pull Johnny off there and he'll do it. He's got either a bad connection or something. It's going on. I guess it's in the works on the internet there. I'm gonna try to call him up and see if we can't get him in.
All right. But what is going on in college athletics? It's the strangest thing I've ever seen. 2,436 players entered the transfer portal. I'm talking football players since the window opened in early December. We can't go on like this. There's no way we can keep going on like this, because how do you have a roster? And that's a problem that we have right now. You've got to have the ticker tape at the bottom of your TV screen in order to keep up with your own roster. And where we're going to be, and it is all about the money. You're right. I understand that. But at what point is the game that we're going to ruin college football unless we fight back? We've got, Greg Sankey, I don't know. What can you count on the Big Ten to do? That's what I don't know. I don't know what we can count on them to do. But I think what we're going to have is, in my opinion, a revolt by the fans. I think the fans are just going to say, look, we're not going to support this crap. And you can say, well, the student athletes, all they're talking about is the money. In my opinion, I think Nick Saban left when Kevin Steele stepped down as his defensive coordinator. And I also think that Nick Saban talked to a lot of the players on his team about the future. And I think the feedback was, what are you giving me? NIL, playing off one school off the other. Johnny, you're right. It's absolute chaos, but we're going to have some crash and burns with these big NIL deals to get back to solid ground where we can make some sense. Wouldn't you agree?
I totally agree with that. And it's interesting. I'm sure you've heard this question being asked, how is anybody going to fill Nick Saban's shoes? And I will quickly add, I don't even know if Nick Saban could fill Nick Saban's shoes. And the reason I bring this up, we're talking about an entirely different landscape in 2024 and moving forward with the additional teams in the playoff. In the SEC alone, we're talking about the addition of Texas and Oklahoma. I mentioned the success and the way 23 wrapped up with. When you have half the teams finishing in the top 18 in the country, when you have half of the SEC teams finishing in the top 20 as far as recruiting, the days of 11-1 and 12-0 regular seasons are gone as far as consistently. You'll
Yeah.
be able to do that every year or so, but you're not going to be able to pull what Nick Saban has pulled off since 2008. Those days are gone. And I don't think Alabama fans will be able to embrace that. I think that's going to be a hard reality for them. And they're going to blame us, Kalen DeBoer. He's just not ready for the prime time per se. Yeah, whatever he did in Washington, but that was under the microscope. Nobody under the lights where they weren't really bright. I just think that anybody, if Nick Saban replaced Nick Saban, he would struggle as far as the college football world moving forward.
No, and I agree with you. And I think that what we've got to look at is who is going to be in charge. Are we going to have a commissioner? If you have too many people involved, decisions don't get made. And that's the problem that we have. The NCAA has maybe 35 or 40 people on staff, and they're trying to govern 133 Division I schools plus D2 and D3. We've got to get people in there. I'm going to tell you what. The NCAA, I think what Greg Sankey and the Big Ten commissioner are doing is basically signaling to the NCAA, we're done with you. You're incompetent, you're incapable, and we're going on to do something else. Because I don't think there's any choice in order to save college athletics. I understand the Supreme Court. Anyway, the Supreme Court, they ruled in July of 21, July 1st of 21, the decision came out 9-0. I mean, can't get any more unanimous than 9-0. It's all about antitrust laws. But college athletics, if we're gonna save it, we got to do it now. I mean, there's just nothing else. And the only way we're going to do it is, and we're going to find out who's messing up the internet. I don't know what's going on in the world that we live in today, but man, I believe that we're going to see, in 2 or 3 years, the Big Ten, those cross-country travel trips, you will see them start reverting back to the conferences they came from. I think they will. It's not feasible.
It's the cost. It's going to be cost to travel and cost to do these different things, and that when they start seeing the hit, you can't keep up unless you're one of these power schools that have all this money, because now you have to be. We go to the NFL model in a lot of different ways because it's the only way to be sustainable. Because then you got to start selling out every other way for everyone to make money to carve it up, right? So it's suddenly, when somebody told me the other day when we were talking, this is, now we're undervaluing an education. Now we're undervaluing a scholarship. Now we're saying that, for a player, that's not enough anymore. And so now we've got to pay you to play, and whose responsibility is that going to be? We have all of these, the collectives and the different, ways. Before we already had started dividing up a lot of the big schools with the UAAs became, fundraisers for their own schools, so money wasn't, shared with all the other programs. So a direct funder can, or whatever would bring it in. We're going to try to bring in Johnny here real quick and see if this works again.
Well, you know what,
Johnny, you hear us all right? Let's see if he does.
Yeah.
You hear us all right, Johnny? No.
I'm hoping that's better. But Johnny, jump in when you're able to hear us.
No.
But I think the cost. If anyone thinks Chip Kelly at Oregon, at UCLA, he realized he was going to get fired, and he doesn't have any NIL money. The state of California is broke. They don't have money. I mean, look what Yohani, the pitcher. 10-year, $700 million contract. He ain't stupid. He's going to get by on $2 million a year. Out of that $700 million, the state of California will only be able to tax $20 million of it. They get a 13.25% state income tax in California. Couple that with 38.6 top maximum federal tax bracket. That's 51%. He's going to take that 680 when he finishes his 10-year deal in California. He'll go to maybe the state of Tennessee,
Johnny,
state of Texas, the state of Florida. You'll end up going.
We've had a lot of problems last couple days.
You'll end up going to.
And it's nothing specific.
You'll
using Safari or Firefox as your internet browser.
You'll end up going to, in my opinion, a different model.
If you click on the link again, I'm going to just walk you through a setting just to make sure you're there. And there's a cogwheel right underneath.
Okay. Well.
Oh yeah, I can walk you through while you're on the.
Yeah. Okay. But I'm just seeing this happen. Chip Kelly going to Ohio State. You think that offense is going to work in the Big Ten? Ryan Day.
Oh no, I can do it through
basically pushed an act of Congress. If you can, Brendan, if you can mute your microphone so I can hear. Yeah, okay. But if the bottom line, Chip Kelly has gone to Ohio State because he knew he was either going to be fired. He didn't have the NIL money at UCLA. Okay, that is the problem, and you're going to see more of this. We're losing coaches. I mean, Chip Kelly took his offense to the NFL with Philadelphia. Remember the first couple of games, we were told Chip Kelly is going to dominate. He's going to rule the NFL. Okay? It didn't happen. After a couple of games, everybody in the league, and I had this discussion from one of my very smart football friends, and everybody picked up on it real fast, and they lost a bunch of games. He didn't make it in the NFL. All these college coaches that go to the NFL, look what happens to them. Except for Pete Carroll. He's one of the very few that have been successful. But when I look around and I see what is happening, you're going to see more of this. We're going to end up having a bunch of 28-year-old coaches. We're not going to have to pay them as much. That's how we're going to get that corrected. But NIL, the low-hanging fruit that people have, money that they can get their hands on. Okay, I don't have to pay a lot in taxes, or I don't have a state income tax like we do in Tennessee or Florida or Texas. I can give $5,000 or $10,000 to my school's NIL program. But you get 13.25% state income tax. I bet the NIL programs are pitiful out in California at the schools out there. And they've got money. This is what we don't understand. They've got a lot of money. They've got a bunch of money at Stanford. They got a bunch of money at Southern Cal. It's a private university. Okay, so they're not getting money from the state of California. But I'll tell you, it's like this all across the country, and it's going on. You look at rumors the other night. Lane Kiffin interested in the offensive coordinator job at Alabama. I mean, we know that wasn't true. That was, people can copy and paste and put memes out all over X, Twitter, any form of social media. That's just how it works. But I just think that, and here it is, Shoney, job preservation is job one with higher education employees until eligible for mailbox money. Well, until we get rid of like tenure, if you don't have accountability, you have no way to accomplish anything. I mean, accountability, that's what's going to keep people in their lanes. Three things: responsibility, that defines your mission; authority, responsibility, that gives you the ability to make decisions; and then accountability, that keeps people on track. But you look at state universities around the country, and in California, the California education system, they're broke. They're hemorrhaging. They're too many. You've got too many people leaving the state. You've got about 1% of the population leaving the last 4 years. I mean, that is going to have a negative backlash. Okay.
Now, do you hear anything better now?
Brendan, yeah, if you can mute your microphone. Okay. Yeah. But if we don't go and have some sense, some people with business background in the private sector, that's what we're going to have to run college athletics. The NCAA, Mark Emmert is out. Okay, we got Charlie Baker, former governor of Massachusetts. I mean, what really is Charlie Baker doing? I mean, so far, what has he done? The portal, I mentioned, since early December, over 2,400 kids have entered the portal. I want to see the stats, because the portal, bottom line, became the law October 15th of 2018. And it became the law of the land October 15th of 2018. I would love to know the percentage of kids that have gone into the transfer portal just in football that have not been picked up by another school. See, in the old days, you would at the end of the year, the coaches would meet with you and see where you fit in to the future of the program. Okay. And if you were fourth or fifth team, they would basically tell you, focus on your studies, or, do something else. You might want to transfer to a smaller school. Brendan, let's just reschedule him for another day. We're chasing it's like chasing a wounded or crippled duck out there when you got other ducks coming in on you. So we'll reschedule Johnny. I don't know what the technical problems are, but the bottom line is, you're going to have to start holding people accountable. But the NCAA, they're not. I mean, they're doing it right with the officials. They're trying to get it right with targeting. I think the learning curve on that was pretty brutal, but you're seeing the instance of targeting calls go way, way down. But where we are in college athletics right now is we're at a crossroads. We know that, but we've been here before. 1906, 19 players died playing college football. Shortly after that, the NCAA started. Teddy Roosevelt sort of got that ball rolling. But we almost lost college football in 1906. A Georgia football player died. His mother went down to the state capitol in Atlanta on the floor of the state legislature and appealed, a passionate appeal, said her son never wanted football to be canceled. And we fought and we saved college football. We made it safer, better. And contrary to popular belief, student athletes are not victims. And I reference Winifred E. Wimp Sanderson, great Alabama basketball coach. When asked one time after an Alabama basketball game, Coach Sanderson, now, how many of your players at Alabama, your basketball players, have graduated? Wimp Sanderson looked at him and said, as many as wanted to. I love that response. We have got to quit talking about these athletes are put upon. What about the fans that are having to pay thousands for season tickets, priority seating, and now they're beating you over the head with a club to pay NIL? Okay, that's what it is. Hey, look. Hey, last night, a lot of good basketball was played. Auburn, look, 13th in the country, and they get to play South Carolina, who's sitting there at number 11 in the conference, in the country. The biggest win in Auburn history against a ranked opponent, 101-61. I don't know what it is. I think Jalen Williams, one of Auburn's better players, had a big night, leading scorer for the Tigers. He said, I wish we could take the jungle on the road with us, because Auburn's got some road wins this year at Vanderbilt, at Arkansas, at Ole Miss. They were down by 12 against Ole Miss on the road, came back and had a big win. Of Auburn's 4 biggest wins in program history against ranked opponents in basketball, I'm talking about. 2 of the 4 have come this year. Of course, last night, 101-61 over South Carolina. And a couple of weeks ago in Oxford against Ole Miss. And let me tell you right now, Chris Beard, he's getting talent. Watch what's going on over there in recruiting. They're getting players. Ole Miss, they have a collective in Oxford, over 11,000 members. Big money. What really jump-started the collective was last year when Lane Kiffin was flirting and Auburn was flirting with him, and they were, having, back and forth. Who really knows what was going on? But the most powerful man in college football, college athletics, is Jimmy Sexton. He knows. But Ole Miss people were like, hell no, we're not going to lose Lane Kiffin. And Auburn got Hugh Freeze. And I'm all for Auburn. Hugh Freeze, please don't complain about having to take your football program 2,500 miles across the country to play Cal. Embrace the opportunity, okay? And just look, and I don't know why coaches don't do that, but you're getting paid $6.5–7 million a year. You should be happy and never complain about anything, okay? If I'm an athletic director, like both of these guys are, John Hartwell, AD at ULM, Matt Dean, associate AD at Rhodes College. Matt's, coached almost 30 years, men's and women's basketball. Bottom line is, you got to have people on your staff that want to be there, that don't make excuses, that are committed to winning. But I'm going to start with you, John, right now. And I don't know what that, what the noise is in the background or what have you, but we're having some technical issues right here. I need to get the old music coming up. We're experiencing technical difficulties. We'll be right back. But Matt, John, I'm going to start with you. When you're talking to coaches now, let's go back 10 years ago. It may be just 5 years ago, because the portal didn't start till October 15th of 2018. You got to say to yourself, how much time do they spend coaching now, percentage-wise, compared to what they did 5 and 10 years ago?
Yeah, and I think it depends on the sport, because as we all get caught up in the headlines of NIL and college football and men's and women's basketball, and obviously with baseball starting up this weekend, you'll see it there too. But a ton has not changed. Excuse me. In terms of the Olympic sport coaches, the soccer coaches, the track and field, a lot of that's still the same. But as you get into these sports where you have student athletes who are commanding top dollar for NIL, it has changed. And a lot of it's, I had a lengthy conversation yesterday with our women's basketball coach. You've got to be as much a psychologist in some ways that you do an X's and O's coach of whatever sport it is, because you're managing personalities, you're managing chemistry, and it's something that coaches at the professional ranks have done for years. Everybody's not making the same thing now. Everybody is not on that same full ride scholarship. You got some NIL, differences there, and you've got to manage that, and the ability to get all of those factions to come together for the common good and for the purpose of winning has become harder, and that's why you see people talking about coaches migrating to the professional ranks, much as Jim Harbaugh did. Of course, he had 16 million other reasons on an annual basis to do that, but it's become more of a challenge, and I think you're going to see some more of the longtime coaches maybe moving out of it, because it's one of those things that if you aren't willing to adapt and change and be flexible to what's going on in college athletics now, it's going to chew you up and spit you out, or you're going to get out on your own volition.
Yeah. Matt Dean, along the lines of what John Hartwell just said, and he made a lot of sense. What can you add to that?
Well, he's, as always, John's right. Great example was this week. Chip Kelly leaves a head job at UCLA.
Yeah.
Become the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. I mean, that's, hate to say it, that's kind of unheard of. It's a great get for Ohio State and Ryan Day. UCLA makes a quick response by hiring one of their former greats, Deshaun Foster, who brings a lot of energy. And there was an article out yesterday. They're already talking about it. In the first 24 hours, Deshaun, met with some collectives, boosters, and they already generated $50,000 in one day. And I'm not saying
50,000 or 50 million.
Well, it wasn't 50 million because if you know a little bit about their facilities, UCLA has some challenges in their football realm.
Yeah,
they don't. John, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't even think they have 100 yards on their practice field. It's a unique situation, right?
No, I don't think they do. People. It's an interesting dynamic, and I'll refer back to Matt in just a second. But people hear UCLA and you hear Rodeo Drive, this and that, and there is a lot of history in that program. Obviously, Coach Wooden and that. But if you compare facilities between USC and UCLA, there's no comparison really. I mean, USC has a significant advantage in terms of facilities.
Well, you sit there and you're talking about Deshaun Foster coming in and making an immediate impact. I mean, he was a running back on the team. I remember in 2000, they were, okay. So he knows that program, but and you look now today, all this push by the SEC schools, and John, you're trying to get facilities at ULM, but you've been at Troy, you've been at Georgia State. You've been at Ole Miss for 10 years. We're all, you look at the facilities around the SEC, just as they're all getting just absolutely elite. Now, what's more important? Kevin Steele was on the Paul Feinbaum show. Someone sent me an excerpt from it before he just left Alabama, obviously before Nick Saban did. But he said, it's a different world. You're sitting in the living room talking to a recruit, and you got facilities, you've got tradition, you got all this, and then the discussion shifts way over here. Hey, man, you're not even in the ballpark for what NIL money is coming from another school. It's like as an AD and a CPA, which, by the way, more than half of the Fortune 500 CEOs are CPAs. I come back, I want to be reincarnated as a rooster with a degree in mechanical engineering and a CPA, a master's in accounting. But John, this is why someone like you and Matt, guys like that, need to be running the NCAA. You understand how to read a balance sheet.
Yeah, it's really important. And, even though, 99.9% of college athletic departments and even Grand Canyon University now is a not-for-profit, at least today. If we end up with student athletes as employees, we may all be for profit and lose tax status. But anyway, that's another discussion. But yeah, you're right. So I had an interesting conversation the other day with a fellow athletic director talking about you have all of these silos, and we've talked about the silos before. You have season tickets, you have annual fund giving, you have capital projects, you have NIL now, and there are a handful of places in the country, a lot of which depend on oil and gas money, who are endless bank. They've got a large enough donor base and the net worth in that large donor base to be able to fund all of these areas. But others of us don't have that. So, what is the most important? You talk about, what used to be the arms race of facilities, and facilities are still really important. But I think you are going to continue to see a shift over maybe the next 5 years or so to, hey, what has the most day-to-day impact on student athletes? Nutrition area, strength and conditioning area, your locker room, the day-to-day, your study area, the sports medicine area, the things that student athletes touch on a day-to-day basis. Those facilities are going to continue to have to be elite. The challenge is going to be, okay, so if you've got an area that you've got to put off repairs or upgrades or whatever it may be, is that something in a facility that impacts the fan experience as opposed to the student athlete experience? And if that happens, and we've seen this evolution with television, then do you lose butts in seats in terms of fan support? And what does that do? So there are so many dynamics working in this, that evolve on a daily basis. It is really, back to your original point, it really is a complex business equation that I don't know that any of us have the true answer to, unless you have enough cash flow to be able to throw dollars at every one of these areas.
Well, this is the problem. And do you want to, what makes the games on TV so cool is the crowds, the atmosphere. And I think, look, this is not new. I remember, Matt, 25 years ago, the Atlanta effect. I mean, we're over in Atlanta right now. The Atlanta effect is 30 years ago, there were 2.5 million people in Atlanta. Yeah. Today, there's 6.5 million. Used to be 5 counties. Now it's spread out over 22 counties. We were coming in Sunday afternoon around 5 from Charlotte up there visiting Wilson, which, by the way, Charlotte is an absolutely incredible city. I mean, Myers Park, Dilworth, Southside. It's the downtown. It is so clean. And I contrast that to my beloved River City, Memphis, where Audrey and I recently counted 39 tires on the side of Interstate 240 in a 5-mile stretch crossing from Arkansas on the Harahan Bridge to the Mississippi line. Trash everywhere. It's an incredible city. But when you get in North Georgia around Commerce, you're in Atlanta. It's crazy. But I'm just thinking here about where we are in college athletics, the money and all that's being spent. Georgia Tech, here's this school that has more millionaires per capita than any school in America, I think, because of their engineering program. And Matt, a lot of kids over there don't even know when there's a football game. I mean, they've got a lot of foreign students. They think football, they're thinking soccer. If you were the AD at a school in the SEC right now, what would be the top 3 things on your to-do list every night when you went to bed that you got to accomplish, or else you're in trouble?
Well, I think John makes some great points too, and I'm going to give you a longer answer here. But when John and I got in the industry, a lot of it was the facility growth era. And what I mean by that is people were building facilities, and that was the benefit for the student athlete, right? You had a better place to play. You may have had a better dorm room. You may have had a better locker room, right? And a lot of institutions in the SEC has maintained that throughout, and that's a commonality. What's really hard today is now you have to have a deferred maintenance plan. That may not be a sexy answer to what you're talking about, but at places like Rhodes College, at places like Louisiana Monroe, we don't have foghorn leghorn, so to speak. Yeah. So we are very reliant on our physical plant here. And I know that's not the answer you were expecting, but one of the things you have to be in touch with is the institutional growth plan. And for us, our building that you come in to see me in sometimes was built in 1996. Well, that's almost 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's not like we have a lot of parachutes dropping down right now. It's a really tough environment to raise money. So getting back to the initial question, I have to have 2 things going on at the same time. I have to make sure within the rules, we have a collective that is healthy and growing to support our coaches. But I also have to have the guarantee from my institution and my president that we can take care of things in an annual to 5-year basis to maintain our facilities.
Yeah.
And because if we continue to go to boosters for facility money, it's going to hurt our collectives in the long run. And until the rules change right now, guys, it's all about that. I mean, it's all about maintaining your opportunities to. And one of the things we haven't touched upon today, as a coach, Rob, one of my biggest challenges is re-recruiting. I have to re-recruit my kids every year. You talk about recruiting new student athletes. Well, I got to recruit the ones I got on campus if I like them, right?
Yeah.
Re-recruit them every year. So it's not just a list of 3 challenges. I think you have to, you look at what happened with UCLA, and I don't know the AD out there, but as soon as they hired a new football coach, all they were talking about was NIL. Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know Chip Kelly personally. I have friends that know Chip Kelly personally. I think Chip's a ball coach, and I think Chip's a product of he was just tired of dealing with things outside of football. And now he gets to make a really good living and just be the offensive coordinator for the Ohio State Buckeyes. And I think you saw that 2 years ago. Jay Wright, one of the finer coaches of our time at the age of 60, decided, I'm done with this. I've been a part of 2 national championships at Villanova. I'll go into TV, great-looking guy. I have friends that know Jay. They had a chance to work with Jay. They say he's just a class act. I think a lot of coaches in our era, John and I's era, are just tired of everything, the outside noise of just being on that court and coaching and practicing. That's long-winded answer, Rob.
No, it's a great answer. And both of y'all, all right, you've given great answers. And now let's switch gears. Let's talk about this SEC basketball race. Alabama's sitting there at the top, 9-2. They were off. They didn't play Tuesday or Wednesday this week. South Carolina, last night, Auburn took them down 101-61. That's a big win for Auburn. Auburn still got to play at Georgia, at Tennessee. They've got Mississippi State, got Kentucky Saturday. You look at Tennessee, Florida, Kentucky, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, down the line. SEC's hoping to get 8 or 9 schools in. I don't know how many the Sun Belt will get in. I don't know what Conference USA, the Mid-America Athletic Conference, the Big East, but there's only 64 spots. John, first off, explain to me, or as Ricky used to say to Lucy, explain to me this Dayton play-in game. Why did they put that in there? It's almost as annoying as the bubble game. Who's in, who's out. First 4 in, first 4 out.
Yeah, so just one slight correction there, Rob. We actually have 68 teams. And that is what those are, those games in Dayton. But I'll say this. For those 4 teams here in about 6 weeks, whoever they may, or 5 weeks, whoever they may be, I promise you they're not going to scoff at
no, they're not
having to go to Dayton to play a game. And it actually begs the bigger question, which has been looked at: are we going to have expansion of the NCAA basketball tournament? Which, again, and no disrespect to the CFP, obviously the CFP, and you see yesterday the new numbers that come out in terms of the new television deal. It is a mega event, but in terms of the sports purist, I would still stand on the table and say March Madness is as great, if not greater, than any other sporting event on this earth. I mean, I think it has that many storylines. It's that compelling. The teams that can advance, a Florida Atlantic, a San Diego State, teams like that being able to advance. But when you look at the SEC, yeah, man, they are, there's really good basketball. But, people may say, well, hey, how can Alabama go and hit an absolute buzzsaw at Auburn and then bounce back? Or how are these things happening where you have 40-point spreads in games? How does Vanderbilt beat A&M the other night? Those things. You have got the physicality in the SEC is unbelievable. People used to talk about, and I know I'm going to get in Matt's wheelhouse here about talking about Big Ten basketball. People used to talk about, hey, the Big Ten, the physicality inside and the guys banging each other. It was as close to what you would see in the NBA in college basketball. But the SEC now, the athleticism and the physicality of the guys, that's what happens, man. If if you go into a war or a big rivalry game and emotions are high and guys playing 35, 37 minutes a game, and you got to turn around and play again 3 days later, it's not that easy to get back up to maintain that high level of play that long. And that's, as a coach, you start trying to get your team prepared, especially this time of year as you go down the stretch in the regular season and then conference tournament and then the NCAA tournament, because you've got to be able to do it, on that both the first and second weekends of the NCAA tournament. You've got to be able to do it twice in 2 weeks or in a 10-day period of being able to get yourself at the peak performance level and the peak mindset to go to war twice in a 48-hour period. And it's difficult. It's really difficult.
Yeah. Matt, along those lines, because John, both of y'all are, college athletes, you've coached. The deal is that you've played it and you've coached it. And I'm just, and look, I was kidding about the 68. I get confused because I love watching the deal up in Dayton, because you know what Dayton, Ohio is famous for, right? Patterson Air Force Base. Now, I've been told by some fellas down in the Florida Panhandle that saw Bigfoot on the way to Wednesday night choir practice that there's some aliens up there at that Air Force Base in the locker, just in Dayton, Ohio. So anyway, that's a big deal that they have up there. And Anthony Grant is coaching up there. So it's both of y'all, as much as y'all love football, you're both, as Kevin Skarbinski calls you, I love his term, you're both hoop heads. You're basketball savants, and I love it. So I'm going to let Matt respond to what John just said, but 18 to 23-year-old kids, whatever your age with your body, if you do nothing, your body will do nothing. What do you do when you play a Wednesday night game? Okay, in this case, Auburn. They got to get ready to play Kentucky, and I don't care what Kentucky's record is. They're still Kentucky. They got the greatest winning percentage. They won 50 SEC championships in men's basketball. They're still Kentucky. What are you doing as a coach? Both of y'all are so laid back and pragmatic, but you're such organized people. What do you do if you're Auburn or you're Florida right now? You got some success. How do you temper that?
Well, first of all, when you're in the dog days of February, and I found this out as a coach, you can't kill them. So you're gonna be in the film room more than you're gonna be on the floor. I mean, if you're on the floor, a lot of times you're getting shots up. You're maybe not going as much live contact as you would in the earlier parts of the season. You're really freshening. You're keeping their legs so you can make a run in your conference tournament or into the NCAA if you have a really good basketball team. It's quite simple. I had a star player, Lauren Avant, who played for me. That, long story short, in 8th grade, she was the 4th best player in the nation. She went to play for Pat Summit. She left Pat after a year, and I ended up having the privilege of coaching Lauren at Rhodes College. She came back home to Memphis, Tennessee. And, Lauren battled injuries throughout her career. She had a midline Achilles tear her first week on campus playing pickup. She had the West Nile virus. I mean, you name it. And I remember Lauren's senior year, we had a really good squad. So Mondays were our off days. Tuesday, she was doing pool workouts. Wednesday, she would get non-contact shooting. Thursday, 10 minutes of live, and then Friday, kick ass. I mean, that was my plan with Lauren. And by the time we got her to the last game in the NCAA, she was NCAA Player of the Year runner-up to Sydney Moss, Randy Moss's daughter. This is back in, I think this was 2012-13. But I say that story because you have to have a plan for all your players. You have to know how to manage people. John, I think, talked earlier, or Rob, about being a therapist or a psychologist. Yeah. And here's the thing. If I'm doing that for one player, I got to make sure the rest of the team understands the plan and don't feel like there's some kind of special treatment going on, right?
Yeah.
So, managing your team is so important these times of year. If you play a Wednesday game and a Saturday game, you're not doing a lot today. You may get a little bit of the soreness out with some light running, but we're just trying to make sure from a nutrition standpoint, we're staying right. We're making sure we're in the film room. We're getting shots. Friday we're probably going through walkthrough stuff, maybe a little bit of half-court possessions to execute. And Saturday, we're going to try and win a basketball game. I mean, you got to be smart. And I think the coaches that are deeper right now, the teams that are deeper have a big advantage because, to John's point with March Madness, you look at what FAU and San Diego State did last year. That was remarkable. And I think college basketball is at a point we don't have the super team. Now, I can make an argument that UConn's looking like a team that can challenge to go back-to-back. But other than that, the SEC tournament's going to be great because who knows who's going to win it? I mean, there's a lot of parity in college basketball right now. It's fun.
Yeah. Well, we all know Kentucky likes to call Nashville Catville. And, John, tournament sites are great because you get the automatic NCAA berth. The team comes in there that maybe is 500 or lower, or they're on top and they get hot. They guarantee that tournament. But I'm with both of y'all. March Madness is the greatest sporting event that we have. And with the portal being like it was last year, John, were you any less interested because we had Florida Atlantic and San Diego State in the Final Four? I didn't. I thought it was fantastic. I love Horatio Alger's stories. The underdog. That's the American dream. You come from humble beginnings and you work your ass off and you rise up to be great. We have no caste system in America. That's what I love. That's what I love about sports. And that's why we get up every morning. I can't sleep at night. I get so excited to do this show. I'm just telling you, and to have guests like y'all on here. We had a little technical difficulties today. Like sometimes crazy stuff happens, but it's no different than during a game when you're coaching. You know what happens sometimes, John and Matt? You know this. On the football field, you lose connection with the people up in the press box. You better figure something out, John.
Hey, well, your system may just be a little out of whack. It's used to very little interference out there on the farm, and you get into big.
I'm in Atlanta. Yeah,
and it's too many airwaves going through.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think the Cinderella stories in the NCAA tournament, whether it's St. Peter, you can go back through the years and look at the various ones. Part of that is, that's part of the mystique of March Madness. Hey, one other thing I was going to mention as we talk about, big fluctuations in scores of games right now. And I was talking with a coach the other day about this. One other thing in college basketball, both on the men's and women's side. And when you have some, super freshmen who play a lot of minutes, who are impact players for your team, this mid-February period is really difficult for them sometimes because you play a significant number of more games in college basketball than you do in high school basketball. So sometimes those first-year players hit a wall mid-February because of the number of games and the repetition that they're playing. That, again, from a coaching standpoint, to Matt's point, you've got to give them some rest and help them to try to get their legs back under them because of the wear and tear. And, again, I know you probably got some listeners saying, well, gosh, they're 18, 19 years old. They should be able to go all day, every day. They can, but just not as high of a level. And so that's a pretty significant impact, as Matt calls it, the dog days of February when you get late in the regular season in both men's and women's basketball.
Yeah, and again, who's the best player in college basketball, men's or women's? I mean, you pick Caitlin Clark at Iowa. I mean, she's the player that everybody wants to watch. And if we get another Iowa LSU national championship game, that's going to be big for women. Men's, who is the best player in college basketball? I'll ask you, Matt, and then you, John.
Well, that's a really I didn't think you were going to ask me that question today. I'll be honest.
Yes. I saw you.
Listen, the easy response is, everyone talks about the 7'4" Zach Edney from Purdue. But does his game necessarily translate, John, to this year's NBA, this era NBA? Back in the days when we actually played a post player, a lot of times, John, you I go back to the Artist Gilmores of the world. When I was younger, I was a big Chicago Bull fan. I love the A Train. I love Bob Lanier. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
With Bill Russell and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar before that, you can go back to the great run of all the UCLA teams. You look at Bill Walton. So I kind of right now, if you had to ask me that question, normally I'm going to take the best wing player or maybe combination guard. But right now, I mean, Rob, I'll be honest with you. There's so many young guys that are really good, that are 18 and 19, that are going to get drafted and leave college early. I think it's a really hard question because, I'll give you a guy that is with the Chicago Bulls now that played with North Carolina. People lost track of him, a kid named Kobe White. Obviously, it's not related to the question. He's getting ready to turn 24 years old, and all of a sudden, he's become a really good NBA player. He's been in the league for like 5 years. No one's even heard of him. And he had 32-7 last night. Bulls, my favorite team, lost again to the Cavs. But my point is, what's happened with college basketball, it used to be in John and my era, these seniors were so good they would get drafted high. Now It's totally different. I can't answer that question because whoever's going to get drafted in the top 5 may blossom, may not, because it's no longer a junior and senior game. From in terms of who's the best player, I mean, you can ask me who's the best senior, but I'm not sure who's the best player.
That's a great – look, we got about 5 minutes left. We're going to do a little over an hour today. But just in these last few minutes, John, he just nailed it. It's so different. And I heard the comment, the game today is played above the rim. Sort of expand on that.
Yeah, it is. Hey, I'm gonna go off script here for a minute, Rob, and I see in the comments section over there we've got the great Maury Gaston tuning in from Birmingham. I know you got quite a few listeners from Birmingham. I'm gonna go totally off script here. I'm gonna talk about what I think, and I watched them for the first time live last night on TV. I watched about half their game. The team that nobody talks about, that I had not seen, I'd seen their record and heard about the number of wins. But I watched Samford against West Carolina last night.
Yes, on ESPNU.
And watched some Bucky ball last night. Man, they play 13 guys, and they go up and down. They will absolutely wear you down. But, man, they are impressive to watch. And, again, the Southern Conference, and I played in that league a long time ago. Samford is one of those teams that, if they get upset in their conference tournament, they're probably not going to make the NCAA tournament. But I don't see them getting upset, especially with the number of guys they play and the style of basketball. But even though they're probably going to be a 15 or 16 seed, I would want no part of them because that style of play is hard to play against.
Yeah, Bucky McMillan, Tucker Osborne, attorney down in Montgomery, friend of mine, played for him at Mountain Brook. I mean, and Leor Berman, the Bermanator, as Andy Burcham calls him on the Auburn Basketball Network. Leor Berman is on that Auburn basketball team. And John Sunvold, I love the Sunvold. John Sunvold is a basketball analyst. He's really good. Played for Norm Stewart. And he said, you played for Bucky McMillan. He goes, won a state championship. Leor Berman looked at him and he goes, won 3 of them. I mean, he moved less than 5 minutes away over on Lakeshore Drive there. We had Bucky McMillan on the show last year and Martin Newton, the athletic director there. Bucky McMillan took Mountain Brook from nothing, the ash heap of irrelevance, turned him into a superpower. I mean, that's how, but you're right. That's what I love about basketball. And you're going to see these teams like, you're at ULM. Y'all had the 4th best recruiting class in about 12 days with your new coach in football in the league. There's all these stories out there that really are the stories of college athletics. I love this, man. We've about run out of time, but I'm with you. Bucky ball is fun. You know what he may be getting some NIL from, don't you? Bucky's. Could you imagine that?
Hey, they've got one right down the street in Leeds.
They do.
So that would be a great deal for them.
We'll be stopping by there today or tomorrow on the way back to Memphis. I'm just saying, Bucky's is pretty amazing, Matt. Matt Dean, have you been to a Bucky's yet? I don't know, but they're big. But I'm telling you, at this time of the year, I absolutely love it. Bottom line, it's college basketball. You don't have as many players as you do in football, but I'm with you. It's these buckyball, just watching them play. Last night it was on during the Auburn, South Carolina game. It was on ESPNU. But you're right. You talk to purists like Matt Dean and John Hartwell that know college basketball. You're watching all these games. And by the way, Matt, John, for anybody that complains and hits the panic button, Doug Dean talked about this last night. A lot of Auburn fans hit the panic button after the loss at Florida. Monday night, I'm watching Kansas. Bill Self, hell of a coach. 5th-ranked Jayhawks on the road in Lubbock. Get beat 79-50, and he gets ejected from the game, kind of like, get me out of here. I can't take anymore. But it is really, you know what? Be grateful for what you have. Isn't that right, coaches?
Yeah, and I'll say this, John, great analysis on Samford. But a couple of players in the SEC that I've watched this year I've really liked, and I'm not saying they're going to be high draft choices, but I think Tennessee finally has a person they can throw the ball into late games and score in Dalton Connect. I think he was a transfer from was it Northern Colorado? I'm not sure.
University of Northern Colorado, UNC. And
then with the times I've watched Auburn, Rob, I love Johnny Broome. I mean, I don't know where he projects in the NBA. I just love his game. I think he's like 6'10", 240, physical, can go to the basket a little bit, protects the rim sometimes. Honestly, I think right now we're in an era, you look at Kansas, teams are struggling to win on the road. The super teams are when you are winning at home big and then going and losing, like look at A&M. They decimated Tennessee last weekend and they go lose on the road to Vanderbilt, who's, like 7-17 or something like that. So there's not many. I have not followed UConn enough. I need to start watching some UConn, but I've heard from some friends that UConn has enough to get back to the Final Four. We'll see.
Yeah, look, we run out of time, dadgummit. John Hartwell, AD at ULM, Matt Dean at Rhodes College in Memphis, basketball savants, basketball Jones. We're going to be getting into some serious basketball discussions. The dog days of February. I've never heard that. I was thinking about the dog days of August. But, guys, hey, unbelievable show. We got through some technical issues. The wheels are down. We're about to land here at the airport. So we'll be back on tomorrow. See y'all next Thursday. We'll get all this stuff worked out. Thanks to all of our listeners, our great sponsors like Hewlett & Dunn, Tom Martin's Body Shop, The Vitamin Shop, and we'll be back tomorrow with a whole new set of issues to talk about. We're out of here. Thank you.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.